Wolfman has been out in theaters since January 17th, and I just barely went to go watch it. Now, this movie here was directed by Leigh Whannell. Hopefully I pronounced that right. The director who also made the 2020 The Invisible Man. Now, that movie there was phenomenal, was great, big fan. I was really excited to go watch this movie. And after watching it, I thought this movie here was, unfortunately, it was underwhelming, and I'll explain why. But before I get into the whole review of The Wolfman or Wolfman, I did want to talk about something I recently discovered. Now, some of you guys probably already know about this, but when I was researching, doing my little reading on Wolfman, I stumbled upon the Dark Universe. Okay, so for those who don't know what the Dark Universe is, basically, it was announced in 2014, and basically Universal Studios was making a branch, right? And this branch was going to be called Dark Universe, or this franchise was going to be called Dark Universe. And it was basically going to be, they were going to remake all of the classic monsters, right? From Universal Monsters, right? So you have Wolfman, you got Dracula, you have Invisible Man, Frankenstein's a bride, you have Van Helsing. All of these, Van Helsing isn't a monster, but part of this, you know what I'm talking about. All of this was going to be part of this Dark Universe. And basically, each of these monsters were going to have their own remake, their own movie. It was going to be like the Marvel Universe, where at the end in the Marvel Universe, you have the Avengers, they all come together. That was the plan with the Dark Universe. All these monsters were going to, kind of come together after they all make their own individual movies. Now, that was what I just discovered, this Dark Universe and all of this big plan, right, to bring all these monsters together. Now, there's 3 movies that have already been made that was supposed to be part of this Dark Universe. You have Dracula Untold, the 2017 The Mummy with Tom Cruise, and then you have The Invisible Man that came out in 2020. Now, I don't know, I haven't seen Dracula Untold or The Mummy. I've watched the trailers, and to be quite honest, wasn't a big fan. I feel like they're branded as action horror films, and I don't think that was the best move to make it an action horror film, Dracula Untold and The Mummy. In terms of The Invisible Man, that movie was great. I thought it was smart, I thought it was creative, and I like how they made that movie. Again, Leigh Whannell directed this movie as well, The Invisible Man. Now, ending this discussion about the Dark Universe, I just want to say, I think the best movie that kind of brought some of these monsters together was the 2004 Van Helsing with Hugh Jackman, right? That was the best movie made when it came to these monsters. In that movie, you have the werewolf, you have Dracula, you have Frankenstein, or Frankenstein's monster, I should say. Because, again, we got to remember, it's not Frankenstein that's the monster. It's Frankenstein's monster that we're thinking of. Anyway, and then also you have, Van Helsing. I think that was the best movie when it came to all these monsters coming together. What I think they should have done, one, is keep these, movies at horror. Keep it horror. Don't make it an action. Because honestly, when I was watching The Mummy, the trailer for The Mummy, the 2017, it felt like I was watching a trailer for Mission Impossible. Except there was a mummy that was destroying the world. That's literally how I looked at it. So 1, like I said, keep it horror. And 2, don't try to make it, modern. I think that was another thing. They're trying to make it a modern thing. Why make it modern? Why not make it, back in the, 1800s, 1900s, back in the day. And then as time passes by, you have each monster getting introduced. For example, you have the mummy. You could introduce the mummy first, back in ancient times, and make it to where, the mummy survives or something, and the next movie comes out, right? Frankenstein's monster. And then at the very end, throw Van Helsing in there and kind of have him, fight against these monsters and whatnot. So that would be my idea. of this whole dark universe. I know I talked a lot about it, but after reading that, I was like, they're doing it wrong. But anyway, for those who didn't know, that was what I discovered, all of that, the dark universe and all that stuff. So all of that being said, let's talk about Wolfman, okay? Like I've said, I thought that this movie was underwhelming. I was expecting a good movie and it didn't really deliver. The biggest thing for me was Wolfman himself. I didn't like the way he looked. In my opinion, I felt like he looked more like a zombie more than anything. It wasn't the Wolfman or a werewolf like the Van Helsing werewolf or like the werewolf movie with Benicio del Toro, which I haven't seen, but I know I've seen pictures of that Wolfman, and I thought that was pretty cool. Or for example, a movie that I have seen that revolves around a werewolf is American Werewolf in London. Now that werewolf, I thought looked a little bit more menacing than this werewolf here. This werewolf or wolfman didn't really look like a wolfman. It looked like a dogman, in my opinion. It just looked like a weak wolfman. It looked like a dude that was just super hairy and a deformed face, to be honest. It didn't really look like a werewolf, in my opinion. So that was one thing I didn't like about this film. Another thing is throughout the film, once they do get chased by the werewolf, right? They go inside the house, and from that point on, it really felt like the rest of the movie was just them running and hiding, and there was really no progression in the plot or anything like that. It just felt like they were just running away from this thing and trying to survive, right? So they weren't getting anywhere with the movie. I also felt like the movie did have a lot of tension, but there wasn't a good scare behind that tension. A lot from this film was a bunch of tension, right? A build-up. There was a lot of build-up, and then at the end of this tension, we received nothing, right? There was nothing really scary going on. It was just them running away again and somehow escaping the Wolfman, and it got really old really quickly. And lastly, I felt like the characters' actions weren't authentic, right? If you were getting chased by a werewolf and you got chased inside a cabin, you would be freaking out, right? You'd be like, what the heck was that? What's going on? Oh, let's close, let's put something in front of the front door like Blake was doing. But also let's, block the windows. Let's try to go upstairs. Let's do something, right? Let's be more proactive. Blake was the only one who was trying to do something. Ginger, I didn't really expect much from Ginger because, she was a child. Maybe she could have been a little bit more scared, but really Charlotte, right? She was just standing there and there was no emotion coming from her. She was just like staring there in default mode, and it just felt so unauthentic to how people would react. And you don't necessarily have to go above and beyond with how realistic their reaction was, but at least have some emotion behind it, right? You're getting chased by a werewolf, freak out a little, ask questions, it just felt underwhelming in that respect. Some things I did like about this film, two things. One, I love how you got to see the perspective of the Wolfman, right? You got to see what he saw and how he couldn't understand what they were saying because he was the Wolfman. He was going through the transformation. You can see better in the dark, right? This movie was really dark, but when it transferred to the Wolfman's point of view, everything became bright, and I like that. I like how you were able to see how the Wolfman saw. You would hear, especially that scene where you hear something upstairs, basically thudding, and it turns out to be a giant spider, right? I think it was a wolf spider or a tarantula. That's how you say it, not tarantula. I did like how you got to see that, their eyes, the way they look. That was pretty cool. The second thing that I like about this film was the transformation of the Wolfman, because in the movies that I watched, for like again, the American Werewolf in London, as well as Van Helsing, the man turns into the werewolf pretty quickly. Like he starts staring off his skin, his mouth starts to, his whole body starts to transform, and within minutes he becomes the werewolf. In this movie, it took basically most of the movie, right? From the moment he gets cut to the end of the movie, he's transforming slowly, and I really like that aspect of the movie. It was different. It was different from all the other ones. So overall, with all the things that I like and I didn't like, I thought that this movie was okay. Honestly, it wasn't a movie worth watching in theaters. That was my review of Wolfman. Again, I thought it was okay. Hopefully, they bring back the classic monsters the way that it's meant. Now, let me know in the comments down below what you think about this whole idea of the dark universe. How should they bring these monsters back? Should it be horror? Should it be action horror? Should they restart from the start and redo these movies as a horror? Let me know in the comments below. But that is it. That was my review of Wolfman. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you guys next time I watch a movie or read a book.